Hello, my amazing Algebra 1 students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. We are here today in your orange book, and we're working on Lesson 11, which is all about reciprocal and multiplicative inverses, and also order of operations is going to be introduced, and we'll talk just a little bit about that. So here we go. The very first thing we're doing is defining what a reciprocal is, and a reciprocal and a multiplicative inverse mean the same thing. So here we have 2/3 and 3/2 are reciprocals. All we did was flip the fraction over and we got the reciprocal of the fraction. So we have -4/11 and -11/4 are reciprocals. And then -5, now notice, remember, any integer can be placed over 1, can't it? So -5 is the same thing as -5/1, and then we can flip it over, and it's easier to do when we have mentally put the 1 on the bottom. So -5 and -1/5 are reciprocals. So they're very easy to think about. 0 has no reciprocal, okay, because what about 1/0? 1/0 is undefined, isn't it? And we have another rule about reciprocals that 0 cannot match. So reciprocals are also called multiplicative inverses. So then, this is the rule that 0 can't match here. A and 1/A are multiplicative inverses. So we've written it in variables so that it's true for all numbers, but here is that rule. A times 1/A equals 1. That's how we define a multiplicative inverse. A number times its multiplicative inverse, or reciprocal, must always be 1. If we don't get 1 when we multiply them together, we do not have multiplicative inverses. And that's where 0 really breaks down. Not only is 1/0 undefined, but there's no way that you can use a 0 and get a product of 1. So 0 has no multiplicative inverse. And now we're going to go into the B portion, and we're talking about order of operations. Now, we're not going to be working on this one and this one right now, but we are going to be addressing these down here. So let's just look at order of operations and just introduce it briefly, and then we'll come back to it lots and lots, because order of operations will never leave you. It will follow you all the way up through calculus and differential equations, okay, which I hope some of you will go up through. But parentheses, exponents and roots, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Now there's some important notes here. One way we can always remember is the way that I remembered when I was a young student long ago is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So Pemdas is a good little acronym for the order of operations. Now, parentheses does not just mean parentheses, but also brackets, braces, and absolute values. Any grouping symbols must be addressed first. Exponents are in the note here, but exponents and roots are the things that we're going to have to address. So powers and square roots, or any other kind of roots, have to be done second in an equation. And then we're going to do multiplication and division are the same order. We will do them left to right as we see them in the order of the line. And then addition and subtraction are at the same rank or level. And we will also do them left to right as we move through the problem. But the big thing is that here in this section, we're addressing specifically multiplication must come before addition. So multiplication and division come before addition and subtraction. These are on the same level, these are on the same level. Specifically in this section, we're talking about multiplication coming before addition. So there's your order of operations lineup, and now let's practice. So here we have a problem, and we've got 4 times 3, a multiplication, plus 2, an addition, plus another addition, negative 3 times 5, a multiplication. Okay, so we're going to look left to right, and we're going to do all of the multiplications first because our order of operations tells us we must. So 4 times 3 is 12. And then once I write down the 12, I will write down the rest of the problem until I get to the next multiplication. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Now I'm going to put it in a parenthesis because I already had put that plus sign there and I don't want to get confused. So now we're ready to do our addition. Remember, since everything is written as addition, it is commutative and we could do it in any order, but let's just do it left to right. 12 plus 2 is 14. Take away 15 would be negative 1. And our answer would be negative 1. That would be the value of this expression. So let's look at another one. And here we have a multiplication, negative 5 times 2, minus 3, which we can write as plus or minus 3. We can leave it as a subtraction if we want. It won't be a problem. And then we multiply 6 times 3 to get 18. So negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. And then I'm just going to go ahead and change this to an addition. I cannot remember right now whether your book does or not, but it doesn't matter really, but we're just going to go ahead and change it. And then we're going to put plus 18. Okay, so your when we're going left to right, negative 10 plus a negative 3 is a negative 13, plus an 18 is going to be 5. Negative 13 plus 18. So the value of this expression was 5. Okay, we have 2 more problems and then we're going to start our practice problems. So the last example on section B is this one right here. And remember, we're going to go through left to right and we're going to do our multiplication because we have no division here and we have nothing of any higher importance. So 4 times 3, remember the little dot means times. 4 times 3 is 12. Minus 2 times 5 is 10, and then we have plus 6 and minus 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, so when we're going to simplify that, we have 12 minus 10 is 2, and 2 plus 6 is 8, and 8 take away 10 is a negative 2. So the answer, that's going to evaluate to a negative 2. And now we're starting section C, which is about identifying when you're going to multiply and when you're going to add. So here we have this problem, and notice that they've changed up a little bit. Instead of designating with a times dot, we have parentheses, and they're saying, okay, we have this parenthesis times a number that's not in parentheses, and then we have a number that's in parentheses and one that's not in parentheses, and then over here we have 2 numbers that are in parentheses. They all mean multiplication. I can have both numbers in parentheses, I can have one number in parentheses, but they mean multiplication. And your book is noting that there is no plus sign in between them. We have the numbers close together with no symbol in between them. Now this is a negative 6 that's being multiplied by the 7, but there is no sign in between them. Okay, we've got a 4 times a negative 5, and there is no addition sign in between them. That negative is a negative 5, so it's the opposite of a 5. It's not a subtraction symbol. So here we go, left to right. We're going to take care of everything that is multiplication. So 4, take away 15. Okay, now we're going to minus, and let's go ahead and put this in a parenthesis just so that we can see what's going to happen. We have a 7 times a negative 6, which would be a negative 42. So we can do it that way, or we can, so we would end up with getting the minus, this minus here comes down, and then the 7 times the negative 6 is negative 42. So once I bring down that minus, I'm treating that like a positive 7. And I end up with negative and negative 42, which will be what? Positive 42. So let's take that out, put in a positive 42. And now let's do it the other way that we could do it. We could, at the very beginning, attach this minus to the 7. So we could change this to a plus, a minus, and stick it in parentheses. And guess what? It means the same thing. -7 times -6 is a positive 42. And then we're going to minus, and then we have 4 times a -5 is a -20. Okay, so we've got a minus a -20, which is a positive 20. Or another way to look at it is the opposite of a -20 is a positive 20. Okay, so we're going to erase this and put a positive 20 there. Okay, so now let's see what we finally evaluate as. So 4 take away 15 is -11, plus a 42 is going to be, let's just do a -11 so I don't lose track of it. So 42 minus 11, because this was a -11, is going to be a 31. And then a 31 plus a 20 is a 51. And if you look in your book, that's exactly what you get. And they may have done it a little bit differently. They kept the minus a -42, and they kept the minus the -20. And they didn't turn them into pluses, but they got the same answer. They did eventually, didn't they? Okay, so now we're going to come back and do 4 practice problems. So here are our A and B practice problems on page 53 of your book. So we're going to go left to right and do our multiplication, and then come back and do our addition or subtraction. In this case, we have a subtraction sign. 6 times 3 is 18. And then we're going to put our minus, and then 4 times 5 times 6 is going to be 20 times 6 is 120. And 18 take away 120 is going to be a -102. Okay, so that should be the answer to A. And then this is B. We have a product here of 15 plus the 2, and then plus another product, which is a -8. Okay, so 15 plus 2 is 17, and 17 plus a -8 is the same thing as 17 minus 8, and 17 minus 8 is 9. Okay, so remember, if we had kept it 17 plus a -8, opposite sign subtract, take the sign of the greater. Okay, so those are your first 2 examples or practice problems on lesson 11. Okay, so this is practice C and D, and we have a multiplication, 8 minus, and then another multiplication dot there, so 6 minus 7 plus 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, now I've got 8 minus 6 is 2, and then 2 minus 7 is -5, and then -5 plus 10 is +5. Okay, so we wind up with a 5. Now, just for our instruction purposes, remember we can always change a minus into addition of the opposite. So basically we can attach that minus here and change this to a plus. We can attach this minus here and change that to a plus. Once we do that, then we can do our adding in any order we want to, because we've turned everything into addition. So let's do it backwards. So let's do 10 plus a -7 is 3, and 3 plus a -6 is a -3, and -3 plus a 5, plus an 8 is, again, a 5. So we got the same thing that we did the first time, but we did it in completely different order because we had changed everything to addition. So last problem here, we start with the 13, and then I'm going to do this one both ways. Okay, so we're going to put minus, and then we're going to call that a plus 4 times a -5 would be a -20. Okay, so in other words, we're going to only count the negative sign once. And if we bring it down, then we treat that like a positive. Positive 4 times a negative 5 is a negative 20. And then minus, I'm going to bring that down. So then 3 times 10 is a 30. Okay, and when we evaluate that, we're going to have 13 minus a minus 20 is going to be positive 20. So 13 plus 20 is 33. Take away 30 is 3. Okay, so now we're going to do it the other way. We're going to change this to a positive and attach the negative sign to the number behind it and see if we don't get the same answer. So instead of the minus 4, we're going to attach the minus sign and make that a plus. We're going to attach the minus sign and make that a plus. Okay, so now let's go again. 13, and then we've got plus. A negative 4 times a negative 5 is a positive 20. And then plus a negative 3 times a 10 is going to be a negative 30. So now 13 plus 20 is 43, plus a negative 30 is a 3 again. So we did it 2 different ways, but got the same answer. So practice that in your homework. Work on this really hard because this order of operations is going to be with you all the way through the rest of your life. You need to learn to do it really well and to enjoy it. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.